Have you ever heard of the greatest conqueror in history? A man whose name echoes through the ages, inspiring both awe and fear in equal measure. He was a warrior, a leader, a visionary, a man who dared to dream big and conquer even bigger. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible life of Alexander the Great. But this is no ordinary history lesson. This is a story of mystery and intrigue, of triumph and tragedy. It's a tale of a man who lived life on the edge, pushing the boundaries of what was possible and changing the course of history forever. But who was Alexander the Great, really? What drove him to become one of the most feared and respected leaders of all time? And what secrets did he take with him to the grave? To understand the story of Alexander the Great, we have to go back to the beginning, to his early life in Greece. Alexander was born in 356 BCE in the ancient city of Pella, the son of King Philip II of Macedon and his fourth wife Olympias. From a young age, Alexander was destined for greatness. His father saw something special in him and hired the great philosopher Aristotle to be his tutor. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander received an education unlike any other. He studied philosophy, mathematics and science, as well as the art of war. But it wasn't just his intellect that set Alexander apart. He was a polymath, a genius in many fields, and he had an insatiable curiosity about the world. He wanted to know everything, to experience everything, to conquer everything. Alexander's thirst for knowledge went beyond the classroom. He was a voracious reader and collector of books, amassing a vast library of knowledge that he would draw upon throughout his life. He studied history, politics and geography, and was particularly fascinated by the writings of Homer, which instilled in him a love of adventure and heroism. But Alexander's interests were not confined to the intellectual realm. He was also a man of action, with a physical prowess that matched his mental agility. He was a skilled horseman, hunter and athlete, and his intense training regimen would help him to withstand the rigors of his later military campaigns. Moreover, Alexander was a natural leader, with a charisma and magnetism that drew people to him. Even as a young boy, he showed a fearlessness and determination that would serve him well on the battlefield. Alexander's life was not without its challenges. Tensions between his father and mother began to boil over, leading to a tumultuous and often violent family life. Olympias was fiercely protective of her son, and she saw in him a destiny that far surpassed that of his father. Philip, meanwhile, had his own ambitions, and he saw in Alexander a potential rival. Despite these conflicts, Alexander remained focused on his studies and his vision for the future. By the time he was 20 years old, he had been named regent of Macedon, ruling in his father's absence. It was the beginning of a journey that would take him from the dusty plains of Greece to the farthest reaches of the known world. Alexander's military prowess was unmatched, but it was his leadership that truly set him apart. He had a unique ability to inspire his soldiers, instilling in them a sense of loyalty and devotion that went beyond the call of duty. Alexander led by example, fighting alongside his men on the front lines and never asking them to do something he wouldn't do himself. He also had a keen understanding of his soldiers' needs, making sure they were well fed, well rested and well equipped for battle. But it wasn't just his own army that Alexander had to contend with. He faced opposition from other powerful leaders and empires, including the mighty Persian army led by King Darius III. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Alexander was able to defeat the Persian army in a series of decisive battles, including the famous Battle of Gaugamela. He then went on to capture the city of Babylon and the capital of the Persian Empire, Persepolis. But as Alexander's empire grew, so too did the challenges he faced. His soldiers, who had been with him for years, began to grow weary of the constant warfare and longed to return home. Alexander himself began to suffer from the toll of his many battles, both physical and mental. But even in the face of these obstacles, Alexander refused to give up his quest for greatness. He continued to push his army further east into the rugged terrain of Central Asia and beyond. It was on this journey that Alexander faced some of his greatest challenges. He encountered fierce resistance from the armies of the Indian subcontinent, including the formidable King Porus. But despite being severely outnumbered, Alexander was able to emerge victorious, cementing his place in history as one of the greatest military leaders of all time. But even as he stood at the height of his power, Alexander's empire was beginning to crumble. He had pushed his army too far, too fast, and his soldiers were growing increasingly disillusioned with their leader. In 323 BCE, Alexander fell ill and died at the age of just 32. His empire, which had once stretched from Greece to India, quickly fell into chaos and disarray. But despite its eventual collapse, Alexander's legacy lived on. He had shown the world what was possible with a combination of military might, strategic thinking, and a fierce determination to achieve greatness. Alexander the Great's military campaigns were not just about conquering lands and people, they were about spreading Greek culture and philosophy throughout the world. With his vast empire, Alexander set out to create a new Hellenistic world order, one that would blend the best of Greek and Eastern traditions. But his conquests came at a high cost. Thousands of soldiers lost their lives in battle, and countless more civilians were killed or enslaved. Alexander himself was not immune to the horrors of war. He was wounded numerous times and narrowly escaped death on several occasions. But despite the bloodshed, Alexander was admired by many for his boldness, his intelligence, and his courage. He inspired fierce loyalty in his soldiers and won the respect of even his enemies. Along the way, Alexander founded many cities and named them after himself, including Alexandria in Egypt, which became one of the greatest centers of learning in the ancient world. He also founded a number of military colonies where his soldiers could settle and receive land as a reward for their service. But Alexander's success was not just due to his military prowess. He was also a skilled diplomat, forging alliances and friendships with the leaders of the lands he conquered. He often married the daughters of his conquered enemies in order to solidify his rule and create a sense of unity. Despite his many victories, however, Alexander was never satisfied. He continued to push the boundaries of his empire, crossing the Hindu Kush mountains and venturing into India. But his soldiers, exhausted and homesick, began to mutiny. They had been away from their families for years, and they longed to return home. Alexander was forced to turn back, leaving much of India unconquered. But even as he returned to the west, he continued to plan for future conquests, including an invasion of Arabia that he hoped would cement his place in history. But it was not to be. In 323 BCE, at the age of just 33, Alexander fell ill and died in Babylon. The cause of his death remains a mystery to this day, with some theories suggesting that he was poisoned or succumbed to a fever. Alexander's legacy, however, lives on. His conquests transformed the world, spreading Greek culture and ideas throughout the ancient Near East and beyond. And his legend continues to inspire us today as we marvel at the achievements of one of history's greatest conquerors. Alexander the Great was more than just a conqueror. He was a man with a rich and fascinating personal life. In this segment, we'll explore his relationships with those closest to him, including his mother, father, and wife. First, let's talk about Alexander's mother, Queen Olympias. She was a fierce and powerful woman who played a major role in shaping her son's character and worldview. Some even say that she was the driving force behind his ambition to conquer the world. But despite her influence, Olympias and Alexander had a complicated relationship. She resented his father, King Philip II, for taking other wives and siring half-siblings for Alexander. And when Philip was assassinated, Olympias may have played a role in the conspiracy to put Alexander on the throne. Alexander's father, on the other hand, was a more distant figure. He was a brilliant military strategist who recognized Alexander's talents early on and encouraged him to study under the philosopher Aristotle. But he also had a tendency to be cruel and unpredictable, and his own infidelity may have contributed to the strained relationship between him and Olympias. Now, let's turn our attention to Alexander's wife, Roxana. She was a Bactrian princess whom Alexander met during his conquests in Central Asia. The two fell in love and were married in a traditional Persian ceremony. But their marriage was not without controversy. Many Greeks saw it as a betrayal of Alexander's Hellenic heritage, and some even accused Roxana of being a spy for her own people. Still, Alexander remained fiercely devoted to his wife and even named a city after her. Alexander's military tactics and strategy have inspired some of the greatest military leaders of our time. His innovative use of phalanx formations, cavalry charges, and siege techniques revolutionized warfare, making him one of the most successful commanders in history. Even today, his tactics are studied at military academies around the world. Alexander was not only a military genius, but he was also a patron of the arts and sciences. He brought Greek culture and philosophy to the lands he conquered, promoting Hellenization throughout his empire. This led to a flourishing of art, literature, and science that lasted for centuries. Alexander's legacy can be seen in the works of great writers like Homer and Aristotle, as well as in the magnificent art and architecture of the Hellenistic period. Beyond his cultural and military influence, Alexander's vision of a united world, free from borders and prejudices, still resonates with many today. His leadership style, which emphasized leading from the front and leading by example, has inspired countless leaders in all fields. Alexander's legacy can be seen in modern politics as well. His conquests laid the foundation for the spread of Hellenistic culture and ideas throughout the world, influencing the Roman Empire and the development of Western civilization. His legacy also extends to the realm of religion. Alexander was known for his religious tolerance and his respect for other cultures and beliefs. He was known to have visited the Oracle of Ammon, and many believed that he was a god himself. This led to the creation of the cult of Alexander, which spread throughout his empire and beyond. Even after his death, Alexander's legacy continued to inspire and influence others. His conquests and leadership served as a model for many great conquerors and leaders who followed him, such as Julius Caesar and Napoleon Bonaparte. Despite his many accomplishments, Alexander's legacy is not without controversy. Some criticize him for his ruthless tactics and the destruction he wrought on those who opposed him. Others question his leadership style and his treatment of his own men. Nevertheless, Alexander's impact on history is undeniable, and his legacy continues to fascinate and inspire people all over the world. As we reflect on Alexander's impact, it's worth considering this quote by the philosopher Will Durant. Alexander's career, from beginning to end, was a storm of passion. What does this mean for us today, as we look at the legacy of a man who lived over 2,000 years ago? How can we learn from his successes and failures? And what lessons can we apply to our own lives and times? I encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning. If you're interested in learning more about ancient history, we invite you to check out our other videos, exploring the fascinating people, events, and cultures of the past. From the dynasties of ancient Egypt to the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, we have a wealth of content for history enthusiasts. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content.